This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, we got a lot to talk about on this episode of Real Talk. In just a second, in less than 60 seconds, we're going to head over to London, UK. Always enjoy opportunities to connect with Andrew MacDougall. He's the director of Trafalgar Strategy. He's been the director of comms for a Canadian Prime Minister. He's got a really solid understanding of politics in the UK and Canada. We'll probably ask him a little bit about the upcoming U.S. presidential election as well. As a matter of fact, MacDougall has a warning for Pierre Poilievre. All signs are pointing to a Poilievre victory the next time that Canadians go to the polls. And before you angrily email me, those of you that may be Trudeau supporters or Singh supporters or supporters of another political party, no, we're not calling an election before the election's even been called. No, we're not declaring something to be fact when it's not yet played out. But pollsters are suggesting Pierre Poilievre could ride a wave of momentum all the way through to a majority government. Just somewhat similar to what Keir Starmer's done, the UK's new Prime Minister. However, there's a warning. MacDougall has a warning for Pierre Poilievre. We're going to get to that in just a quick second. Plus, MyJasper Memories, a lot to talk about there. A huge response to our Real Talk Roundtable just this past episode on young kids, this epidemic, they're calling it, of expulsion from early childhood services. We talked to a mom on our most recent episode. Her young daughter, Ava's been expelled from 7 different childcare centers. She's 4 years old. It's prompted a conversation about inclusion in ed, about, the makeup of classrooms all the way up into high school and university. And boy, have you ever responded, Real Talkers. We're going to get to more of your emails today from Shalaine, from Nicole, from Dean. Really great ones. Oh, yeah, and it's the season opener for our very own Edmonton Oilers. Speaking of not, deciding or declaring things before they happen, I'm not going to call them the 2025 Stanley Cup champions because that would be foolish.
Very foolish.
It would be very foolish to start talking like that at the beginning of a season, but they are certainly a Stanley Cup favorite, and you and I are quite excited about
I like
this.
to say defending Western Conference final champions.
Yeah, well, Western Conference champions.
Yeah,
That's not bad. Yeah. And we got to throw a little shout out your way, Johnny, and I'll do my best to embarrass you a little bit later on because you have you've become an international media megastar virtually overnight. And so more news on that coming up in this must-listen episode of Real Talk, which is made possible by the team at Business Career College. And they've got a really quick, concise, but important message to those of you that are working as financial advisors and senior finance professionals. Polling shows about 3/4 of the new generation of investors are looking to add digital assets to their portfolios, which means that you in your field are probably going to get more questions on things like Bitcoin, NFTs, decentralized finance. You want to be able to advise your clients properly. And of course, you want to give them great rates of return. You want to make sure you don't screw anything up. And you don't want to, get all your facts from TikTok or Instagram or wherever else you've been learning about decentralized finance. Business Career College has been a leader in financial training since 1997. They've got a new designation called the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation. That's the CDAA. You can learn more about it at businesscareercollege.com. And if you use the promo code Ryan20, all one word, they're going to knock 20% off your investment in that CDAA course. That's Ryan20 at businesscareercollege.com. So just the other day, I'm clicking around and reading different news sites, different commentary sites, and I come across The Line. And always good stuff there at readtheline.ca. And there's our pal Andrew MacDougall with the headline, Poilievre will have to avoid the Starmer flop. I haven't seen the word flop associated with the leader of Canada's Conservatives yet, so I thought we got to get MacDougall on the show. He's the director of Trafalgar Strategy in London. He's a frequent commentator on matters of politics and, of course, former communications director for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for doing this, pal.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. It's kind of funny when I think of UK prime ministers. I don't want to start off on a naive foot here, but I think of I'm thinking of like Margaret Thatcher and John Major and Tony Blair and all these prime ministers that had tenures of like 6 years and 7 years and 10 years, and then I think since 2022, 3 different PMs in the UK. It feels like nothing but upheaval. How would you describe kind of the last few years in British politics?
Well, it's been chaos. I think that's the word I'd use, Ryan. Certainly from even you can go back to Scottish independence referendum in 2014. Then you had David Cameron winning an unexpected majority in 2015, losing the Brexit referendum in 2016. Theresa May losing her majority in 2017 to Boris Johnson. Then to, as you note, COVID and the 3 prime ministers in 2022. With Rishi Sunak picking up from the damage caused by Liz Truss, which is still being felt in the economy today. So it's been chaos.
So what was it about Keir Starmer that, something like had like 400, over 400 of 600-ish seats in a recent election victory? Everyone's going, this guy is like obviously caught a wave, is on to something and enjoyed very early popularity. And then for those that haven't been paying too close of attention, boy, have the people turned.
Yeah, no, he's now polling at 29%. So that's 1 point above the Conservatives. And his win, while broad in terms of 411 MPs out of 600 and some seats, was very shallow when you do the analysis looking back. And he has spent the first 3 or 100 days to be this weekend, basically just scaring everybody and saying how awful everything is and how big the mess is that he has to fix. And we're still another 3 weeks away from his first budget. So there won't be an opportunity for him to tell a good story for another few weeks. And so it's probably no surprise that he's down in the toilet, down by the Conservatives who are leaderless right now.
You write about this well, and people should read the entire piece, obviously, at readtheline.ca, but you talk about some early political stumbles. I mean, coming out of the gates and introducing a tax increase is probably difficult for any politician, regardless of justification. In his case, he's saying, well, it's the government before me that put us into a fiscal hole. We're going to have to do something about it. But some big union negotiations, sort of a perception, I think, of corruption's a loaded word. But how would you put it, these early stumbles?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a classic tactic, isn't it, Ryan, when you come in and go, oh, my God, even we didn't think it was this bad.
Right.
And so Keir Starmer's been talking about this 22 billion pound black hole in the nation's finances. And what he's not telling people really, and not out loud anyway, is that about 10 billion of that is his own choice in giving the public sector a big pay rise. And then, as I wrote, he negotiated an end to train strikes by giving train drivers a big increase. And they then promptly promised to go out on strike repeatedly throughout the autumn. And, he promised to crack down on migration. We had the highest number of people coming across the channel on small boats than there had been ever. And yeah, he's been caught taking hundreds of thousands of pounds of freebies, whether that's his Arsenal tickets to watch the football, or soccer as you'd call it over there, to personal wardrobe for him, his wife, and half the senior members of the cabinet. So yeah, it has been as bad a start as it can be. And it's a good reminder to any leader who's cruising into power in these days that the world's a very tricky and complicated place. And you're not going to have that much time to show that you're different from somebody or from the people that came before you. And that's the warning to Pierre Poilievre is you're going to win a big majority if the polls are right. But you better get busy doing something with that because, circumstance will catch up to you. And in Starmer's case, within months, he's already bogged down.
Sidebar, we'll get back to our regular conversation in just a quick second. You're talking about the Arsenal tickets. I don't know if you were paying attention, but this summer there was a flare-up of an issue, quite frankly, for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's issue managers when it was exposed, I guess, when it was reported that the Premier herself and members of the staff and some press secretaries, et cetera, had accepted some free Oilers playoff hockey tickets. And obviously the NDP did as best they could to make it into a thing. And of course, the optics of it are problematic. You mentioned Starmer's Arsenal tickets. What was the policy when you were comms director for a prime minister? I can remember many, many times seeing video and broadcasts of Prime Minister Harper, obviously a big hockey fan, in the stands and wearing the jerseys and mixing and mingling with Canadians. What was the policy on who paid for those tickets, what you would accept, what you wouldn't accept? What do you make of that whole thing?
Yeah, we were certainly, Ryan, very strict about it, and we had chiefs of staff who were quite strict about these things. So that the rules were anything over $200 would have to be declared publicly, and staff were certainly not encouraged to be accepting anything. And certainly, when the Prime Minister would go somewhere, he would pay for the tickets. That was very much his decision to do that, and that's how he wanted to operate. And I think that's I think people expect that their national leaders will go to events, sporting events of national significance. So I think there is some room there to have a conversation about how strict you should be. But what you really have to watch out, and what's really caught Starmer up, is his government has plans now to bring
Looks like we may have.
a
There he is. And Andrew,
spot.
your signal's kind of jumping in
And-
and out there. Sorry, we lost you for about the last 30 seconds. Why don't we? You know what, Johnny? Why don't we work on his signal? Why don't you? I'll take a quick break just so we can get this sorted. We're talking to Andrew MacDougall. I want to make sure I can hear everything he has to say. So Johnny's going to get to that in just a quick second, and we'll give him a minute to sort that out. I want to put something on your radar. Listen, we're very close to Thanksgiving right now, and our friends at Friesen Brothers want to take all of the workload off of your plate, my friends. That's right, Friesen Brothers right now, of course, bringing back that Thanksgiving dinner box. This is the one our family has got year after year after year. Why? Because it's prepared by their Red Seal chefs. It's designed for easy reheating, and each one of them serves up to 4 people, so you can get exactly how much you need. It features the traditional Thanksgiving dishes, everything you'd expect, including, of course, roasted turkey, their house-made cranberry sauce, not out of a can, plus the roasted baby potatoes, root veggies. You can add on pumpkin pie, granny's stuffing, cinnamon buns, whatever you like. You can use the Friesen Brothers Order Ahead app if you like. You can order them in store. Pick them up at your local Friesen Brothers. You can find more information at cateringbyfriesen.com/Thanksgiving box. And our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy want you to know that just because the leaves are starting to fall, just because soon we'll be talking about things like wind chill and snow, it doesn't mean that they're taking down the "we're hiring" sign. Kubi is always hiring. You can check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. You may be an electrician. You got your ticket. Maybe you're an apprentice. Maybe you're in sales. Whatever it is that you bring to a team, Kubi would love to hear from you. They've got all kinds of team members, co-op placements, new grads, experienced professionals, project managers, you name it. And of course, they're hiring around the clock for positions in BC and Alberta. Again, that's the careers link at kubienergy.ca. We talk about the Civic Service Union on this program. That's CSU 52, Civic Service Union 52. They've just launched their Edmonton for Everyone campaign. If you're living in the Metro Edmonton region, take a second to check out edmontonforeveryone.ca. They're representing about 6,000 public service workers, and they're trying to get you, Edmontonians, involved in decisions that are going to help shape the future of the city. We're talking about taxpayer dollars that are used to support core services that keep Edmonton vibrant, safe, and livable. They want to see core services like 911 operators, accessible transit, public libraries, rec centers, healthily funded. And of course, they want to make sure that the city's not spending on projects that don't align with your priorities, the priorities of the community. You can check out details at edmontonforeveryone.ca. Still working to get Andrew MacDougall back. That was kind of weird, hey? That was just like the signal kind of glitched and then we lost him. But as soon as he signs back into Zoom, we'll bring him back. Again, he's talking about this piece that he has in the line. Andrew MacDougall writing, Pierre Poilievre's got to avoid the Starmer flop. And I'm not going to make the argument for him. There's a reason why he's on the show. But he basically says Keir Starmer's rolling in with the momentum, sort of a parallel. You could compare him, let's say, to Pierre Poilievre. But he says now, just after a short time in office, the comparison toward Justin Trudeau, end of tenure Justin Trudeau, may be more apt. And he argues that, and we'll hope to get him back on the show. It is, as mentioned, a big night with the of course, the home opener of the Edmonton Oilers, the defending Western Conference champions, and of course, everybody in our home city is abuzz around this. And,
Of course,
and I don't know that anybody in Edmonton is has fallen in love with hockey because of the new Amazon series, the Amazon Prime series Faceoff, but I can guarantee you that almost everybody that's seen the 2 episodes behind the scenes during the Stanley Cup final, the Western Conference final and the Stanley Cup final, and saw Connor McDavid's impassioned plea to his teammates, is probably even more excited than anybody thought that they possibly could be heading into a season hungry for a cup.
I mean, if you haven't seen Faceoff inside the NHL, I mean, how can you not be romantic about hockey, Ryan? I mean, this is, and I love that we're living in this time now where, like, before, we'd get the classic interview, we got to put in more time, we got to get pucks in deep.
Full 60 minutes.
Now we're seeing the grit. Now we're seeing the stuff behind the scenes. And there's a lot of profanity, but there's also a lot of emotion. There's a lot of there's a lot of camaraderie. I mean, these guys are brothers. These guys are like backing each other up. We always hear about, they're millionaires on the ice shooting little rocks into nets. Man, they are really, all the teams that they show in this documentary, just really, really close-knit group of guys and brothers. And one thing I'll say is I think you're wrong. I think it is drawing new fans. I think it is drawing.
I'm just saying in Edmonton, everybody's already converted.
Oh, we're all in.
Yeah.
But I mean, the NHL, and props to them. I had a chance to work with them during the bubble. Their production crew who put this together along with Amazon, absolutely incredible. I mean, the way they did it, the way they're marketing to the new fans, because, if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, you've already got your sports. If you're watching basketball and football or golf and baseball is your thing, you're not likely going to see this and just pick up hockey. But the young fans, the teens, the younger fans, the 20-year-olds, watching this really gives an extra layer of, I don't want to say coolness, but just an extra layer of pop, an extra layer of man, hockey is really a cool sport. And not only that, what goes on behind the scenes. And I said it this morning to you. They did a great job by not bringing on, and no disrespect to the legends in broadcasting and the older guys who do it, who, this isn't Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em. You've got Pete Blackburn. You've got all the people from Twitter who are extremely popular these days. Biz Nasty from Spit and Chicklets. These are the people commenting on it. Combined with
Biz Nasty from Real Talk, you mean?
Yeah. But combined with current music, I mean, they really did this well. This feels fresh. This feels like 2024. This feels like, hey, hockey is freaking awesome. And if you ever thought it wasn't, this will convince you it is.
You say frickin'. Have you ever heard so many F-bombs in a documentary your life?
I watched all 6 episodes last night, and the first thing I thought was, how in the fucking world, and I'll say fucking, did Ryan watch this with Wyatt? Because I know you want to watch it with Wyatt.
No, I didn't watch it with him.
I know
it was so funny. So when you're watching something and then you go away and then you've got the thing on your screen and it'll say, like Netflix, any streaming service does this. It'll say, "Are you still watching?"
Yeah.
And if you hit yes, then it'll start playing again. So I'm watching it, and then I go to bed, the TV shuts off, what have you, and then our Wyatt Rudy, who's 9 years old and like a huge hockey fan, comes down in the morning for his breakfast, and the TV's there on the kind of screensaver mode.
Yeah.
And he clicks it, and it says, "Are you still watching?" He says yes. He clicks it again, and all of a sudden it goes into like the locker room tirade.
And
it was like every third word is an F-bomb, and I'm upstairs brushing my teeth, and I hear it, and I'm like, oh, I'm like coming downstairs, and he kind of looks at me with wide eyes, but
what a peek behind the curtain, because
very cool.
Even the coaches, remember when the former coach of the Edmonton Oilers dropped that F-bomb before he was released from the Oilers? I think it was like 2 months before, in an interview, and we all kind of were like, whoa. But I mean, there's so much passion. There's so much emotion going on behind the scenes. How can you not be fired up? How can you not use expletives? But the fact that they didn't, I was like, wow, they didn't bleep any of this out. They didn't make a clean version.
Yeah.
This is just raw, unedited footage. And even that scene you're talking about where Connor's crying, they've lost Game 7. I mean, just telling them, get the fucking cameras out of here.
Yeah.
I thought this was just great content that you could have omitted, that you kept in, that just kept it real and
I thought it was really good. Ken's in our chat here. He says there could have been so much more, he says, but I think that F1 fans probably feel the same about that. that series. I thought that F1 series was really well. I think that the PGA Live series, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called again, but they did a really great behind-the-scenes one on golf as well. Yeah. Ken goes on to say, by the way, he says, my wife says that they all talk like you, Ken. And how about this one from Chad? Chad, I feel your pain. It's a 6-episode series. 5 and 6 are about the Oilers, and Chad says, I still can't watch the last 2 episodes yet. It's too soon. Very cool, I will say, to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you.
I was watching, I think it was episode 5, and they're showing the moss pit, the Oilers fan experience outside the rink, and then I hear that voice. I hear the voice of Real Talk's technical genius, who of course doubles, as you all know, as Edmonton's most popular DJ. And you must have got a real kick out of that.
I didn't even know, because I was saving it for this week. I was busy this weekend with events and DJing, and I'm at a wedding, and all of a sudden texts start coming because it came out this week, and I got one and then another. So I think it was Saturday night. Everyone was taking in, kind of all 6 episodes, and I got all these texts. You made it in the film. I'm thinking I'm on camera or something.
Well, that would have been cool.
It's just my voice, though. If you go to the 21st minute of episode 5,
you know exactly where.
Oh yeah, because I watched it like 10 times last night.
I would too.
If you go to the 21st minute, they're showing the moss pit. They're showing ahead of Game 7 or ahead of the Game 6 in the Western Conference Final, and I'm screaming in the background, "Are you ready, Edmonton, to punch your ticket to the Stanley Cup Final?" And
the place just goes nuts.
Uproar, and it's incredible to be involved. I have to tip my hat, because I'm thinking that was probably Steve Mayer who
That's
pushed
your buddy with the NHL,
the CCO of the NHL.
Or it could just be that you're really good at your job and you had everybody going. And how are we doing with Andrew? Is he
Andrew's
back
here? Let's go.
Okay, awesome. Let's get right back to him. We love Drew. Thanks for working with us. Does anybody call you Drew, or do you hate that?
I prefer it to Andy, so let's go with Drew.
Okay, well, or I'll just call you Andrew. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for troubleshooting. We're great to have you back. We're talking politics for those that are just joining us on the live streaming Mixler audio app presented by California Closets. Andrew MacDougall joining us live from London. His piece in the line, Poilievre will have to avoid the Starmer flop. So you've got some comparisons early on to the UK's new PM, Keir Starmer, and Pierre Poilievre. What would you say are the key ones if you were to draw that parallel, like, I don't know, 3 months ago?
Yeah, I think the key is Canadian politics was inverted to British politics, where you had basically the opposition way ahead, but it was Labour, left-leaning party, that was way ahead, and then won a massive majority government and has spent the first 100 days of it basically pissing it all away, and we're now back to parity between the parties. And it's just a warning to anyone who thinks they're going to, that thinks that the job is done when they take office for that first day. You haven't even begun the real journey yet, which is trying to fix some of these very difficult problems. And Starmer's failed on the economy, failed on migration, failed on personal propriety. His big thing was, I'm not the corrupt people before me. And he's been caught with his hand in the till on over 100,000 pounds worth of freebies that he's taken, since he became the leader of the opposition and into government now.
The freebies thing just blows my mind. I'm not going to obsess on it, but it just to me seems like such an obvious way to get nailed and such an obvious way to lose public favor fast. So that always really surprises me. So let's say hypothetically you're convinced by Pierre Poilievre himself to come back, to move back to Ottawa, and you're going to join his team in a senior leadership position, that sort of a thing. What sort of specifics are you talking about to the Conservative leader of Canada? Now, we're making a few assumptions in this conversation. Number one, he's still got to win an election. Number two, in elections, we're assuming, although you and I can dig into this, assuming it's about a year away, though not necessarily. So what are some of the key points, some of the specifics you're talking to Pierre Poilievre about? Be careful about this. Be careful about that. Focus on this. Ignore that.
Yeah, I think the main one, and I think Pierre Poilievre understands this, is that you have to get to work fixing the problems. It's not rhetoric. Days are over, and Pierre Poilievre's done really well on speaking and on talking the talk. Now it's time to walk the walk. So we don't need to hear about, all the bad stuff that you inherited. You really have to switch on to what we're going to do about it together as a government to make things better. And then it's really about fixing. I think if you look at 3 things in Canada, it would be about getting house building somewhat on track. It would be getting a grip again back on the immigration system and the mess that's become. And then again, Canada finding its voice on the world stage, in that these problems that we're trying to solve as Western democracies can't be solved within the borders of any Western democracy. So instead of that instinct that people think populists have to withdraw to within the borders of your country. You really have to work with partners around the world, and he can be a real different voice around those tables, bringing a very different perspective, certainly one that to one Canada's had for the past 10 years. So I think there's those three main opportunities, and the more progress you can make faster, the longer you'll be in office.
It's been like, I guess, about 15 years since Prime Minister Harper asked the Governor General at that time, Michael Jean, to prorogue Parliament. Pardon my memory skip here. Were you on the team at that point?
Oh, yes. I was bricking it in the office.
What do you remember? What do you remember about that period of time, and why was that the move that you and the team, that the Prime Minister, most importantly, thought made most sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think my overwhelming memory of that day is, gosh, this is taking a long time. You know, Michael Jean famously took, I guess it was over 2 hours to grant what we thought should have been a fairly simple proposition, that we have an election. And I think, and this is a challenge, right? When you're a minority, I think people forget how slim the minority was. We had 125 seats out of 308 in that first go round. So there wasn't a lot of room to maneuver. We'd gotten two budgets through with the Bloc Québécois, with their support, not courting it, but presenting things that they felt they could support, including the motion about Quebec being a nation within Canada. And then, there was obviously people would point to the scandals that were about at the time. Principally was Afghan detainees and others, but everything had become treacle, and it was clear that there wasn't much life left in that parliament. So that's why the decision was taken to go, and ultimately was granted. And ultimately there were two more elections with two more wins for Stephen Harper. So whatever people felt upset about that in the moment certainly went away, especially once the economy fell over in 2008.
It's basically like, this is my layperson's understanding of it, but it's basically a way to end a session and kill anything that's on the table, right? It's kind of like wiping the slate in a way, isn't it? To make a few pesky issues potentially disappear. Is that like an adequate or somewhat accurate layperson's description?
Yeah, prorogation is certainly a reset. So everything that you have goes, and that means all the legislation that you like, that you're making good progress on, goes, along with any bad stuff that might be there. So if you're looking at things that the Bloc is proposing, one way to neutralize them would be to wipe that slate clean.
Yeah.
And just shut it down and come back. But, when Justin Trudeau, let's not forget, is a great Democrat who promised very famously to never do the things that Stephen Harper would do. And prorogation was certainly, if you look back to his prospectus in 2015, was very much that. The Liberals kept raising that as an issue. They said that accountability, transparency, access to information. And these are all things that the government's just not delivered. So if they were to go down the road of prorogation, that would certainly be another black mark in a long list of now black marks and promises to be different that didn't end up being true.
So you've got just a couple of days before you and I are speaking here, the Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland basically says in one word, says no when asked if the Prime Minister was considering proroguing Parliament. But they've been basically stalled out for more than a week. Parliament has. MPs are talking about, let me say the opposition MPs are complaining that their work is being impeded by the government not turning over documents related to a now defunct green technology fund and allegations of misspending there. So they say no to prorogation right now. But there's a lot of stuff swirling around. Obviously, everybody is aware of the video that was released by Jagmeet Singh a few weeks ago now, the kind of, I guess, a bit of a publicity stunt, but it put the Liberals on notice that there was no more unconditional support of the government, that they were going to have to work for it, sort of with every bill, they were going to have to work for it week after week. And of course, a lot of folks wondered if that might trigger an early election. Although then you have, the leader of the Bloc, you've got the leader of the NDs going on the record and saying, it's a choice right now whether we'd rather have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre. Sounds like they're not convinced they want either. What do you think happens over the next weeks and months?
Yeah, Brian, my thought for a long time now has been that this government's just going to do basically anything it can to get onto the other side of the U.S. election. And I think they think that if there's any game changer out there to be had, it would be Donald Trump appearing back at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and using that as something with which to whip Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives in Canada, going like, we can't have both of this, like both of these guys on either side of our border. We need me, the champion for all that is right and progressive in the world, to be the Prime Minister still. I think that's the only thing they can see in their kind of calculus. Because if you look at the budget, didn't change the narrative. You look at the major cabinet shuffle, didn't change the narrative. Nothing this government's done for the last very long time now has shifted the opinion. The polls have stayed where they are. The gap is large and growing, particularly amongst young people. And that should be a warning to the Prime Minister that, the great advantage of being in office is you have the ability to do stuff. And they're just not doing enough stuff, whether that's on housing, immigration, et cetera, even though they're trying to change their tune. Ultimately, you have to deliver. And if you've been there for 9.5, 10 years, which Trudeau has been 9 years now, you can't blame anyone but yourself. And ultimately, what has to happen is an election to get a different cast of characters in Ottawa and give somebody else a shot to fix the problems that Justin Trudeau doesn't seem to be able to fix.
There's it's been interesting to watch, on this show back in February and many other times during interviews, Trudeau has insisted he's not going anywhere. You can tell he's still, I think he wants to go head to head for the first time in a campaign against Pierre Poilievre, never has. But obviously polls suggest that the party's going to get smoked. I don't know that there's a direct comparison between Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau. I think age was the number one issue with Biden. Obviously, I think age contributed to the disastrous debate performance, which ultimately I think led everybody to believe, even Biden's tightest supporters, that it was time to make a move. Are you surprised that Trudeau is adamantly hanging on to this point with polling this low? Or can you see a world where he can get the nose up on this plane and get those polls turned around over the course of the next 10 months and actually earn another term?
Yeah, short answer is no. I don't think there's a way for him. The Liberal plane is going down, and it's just a question of how badly it smashes onto the ground. And I think I think he really does want to go mano a mano with Pierre Poilievre, because I picture him much like Stephen Harper probably was in 2015, looking at Justin Trudeau and going, I can't lose to that guy.
Right.
Not that guy. And so I think there's a bit of ego there. And I think ego is the enemy. And particularly with this prime minister, he seems to have this kind of supernatural belief in his own goodness. And if only people would just see that goodness and what Canadians are trying to tell him and have been trying to tell him for a while. Look, the past two election wins have been minority, 32, 33%. There's not like there's this groundswell of people out there in love with Justin Trudeau. I think people know what they get with Justin Trudeau, and an increasing number of people don't like what they get with Justin Trudeau, and that's the message that's been coming. And so at some point you have to accept that. And the question is, it's going to be bad. Which way is the least bad? And I think this is maybe where he's looking over to the United Kingdom. And Rishi Sunak tried to surprise the nation with an early election and got hammered even worse than they thought it was. So he might be saying, look, I'm going to cling on to this office for as long as I can in case something turns up. Whether that's Trump again or something else, something can turn up because there's nothing he can make happen, or else he would have done it already. And so it's not a great place if you're a Liberal. But look, there's no Nancy Pelosi, in the background, able to shove Justin Trudeau out. Chrystia Freeland's not going to do it. We've seen people like Pablo Rodriguez leave. Others have left. There's no figure that commands support within the party that could have that conversation going. Look, pal, your time's up. Canadian Prime Minister in a parliament is quite safe from any internal coups, and I think we've seen that with Justin Trudeau.
Who do you think is the next president of the United States? Everybody says, nobody answers the question on the show. Everybody says it's too close to call. I don't think, Johnny, we've had a single guest that we've asked this question that's gone on the record. Will you go on the record?
I think it's going to be Trump, and that does not fill me with any great hope. But as bad as he's been in this campaign, he has been terrible. He's still there. And if you look at those 6-7 swing states where it comes down to, it's going to come down to tens of thousands of votes cast across those geographies. And if his numbers are holding firm now or where they are now, I can see a lot more shy Trump supporters than I can see shy Kamala Harris supporters. And that's why I think he'll pip it. But I think that's an awful result. But we're just at that point where everything is baked in, and it is about negative partisanship and who can motivate their base to come not support their candidate, but keep the other people out. And I think Trump just edges that.
Yeah, totally. When you say that I don't remember the word you used. Did you say atrocious? The campaign's been atrocious. What would be what would be something you looked at and you just went, oh my gosh?
My God, everything. If you look at the debate he had with Harris, she ended every single answer with a piece of bait for him. And this is his weakness, right? He takes the bait every time. And good for her that she figured that out. She can literally give a rambling nonsense, nothing answer on immigration, and then go, but yeah, his penis is small. And Trump would go, oh God, my penis isn't small. How dare you? Like, that's what he does, right? Everything's about him. It's got to be the best. I'm the best, the biggest, the greatest. Hey, all that. And so I think she's done that. But, the man's been shot at twice, and that's kind of like, we've already forgotten about that. These are just the times we're in. And he is just, the one thing he did that was great was after that first assassination attempt, going back up to the podium, fist in the air. That was kind of theater. But everything else is just his id and his insecurity and his kind of sociopathy about having to make everything about him. And yet he's still in there neck and neck. And that's why I think that people have just priced it in. And whether that's Elon jumping around saying everybody's got for Trump now, that, I think he'll just get it. And
I just like surviving 2 assassination attempts, or at least one. I don't know. The golf course one is still weirds me out. I don't know about that one, but there's no doubt about the other one. And then to have like the wherewithal. Listen, I'm not like a conspiracy theorist that thinks that it was set up. I don't think he knew it ahead of time. I don't think they had a sharpshooter that was able to just pick the corner of his ear and not blow his head off. Like, I'm not suggesting that. But when you see him take a bullet like that, go down, and then get back up with blood all over him and start fight, you're just like, what? Like, it was like the whole thing was like you couldn't draw it up better. Like, honestly, I thought when I was watching that, like, day of, I felt like he's going to win the election. Like, this is going to win him the election. Like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, and if he has the superpower other than, like, not having shame, because that's a kind of superpower, I think he is the best communicator in this moment. As bad as I've just said, some of the things he said he gets the moment we're in and the communication environment that we're in better. He understands the swamp of social media and the attention economy. He gets the diminished power of news organizations. He gets that none of this matters in the way that it used to matter. And what you need from someone to succeed in that world is to not have any shame. And I think he can step on his own junk as many times, like in ways that would kill any other candidate. And he just powers on because he doesn't have that shame. And he knows that one disaster will lead to another, but it's all grist for the mill of this information economy that we're in. And he ultimately wins in that sewer.
We've got a lively debate happening right now in our YouTube live chat on whether or not it was staged, whether or not the bullet actually hit him. I'll leave it to our Real Talk live tuners to sort that one out. Let me ask you this in closing, Andrew. Sure, appreciate your time. We've taken you into overtime. I want to acknowledge that. But under your direction, Prime Minister Stephen Harper had, I don't want to say an antagonistic relationship with media, but I certainly wouldn't describe him as media friendly. I think you could certainly say the same thing about Donald Trump. He's more of a media entrepreneur than anything, but he's obviously talked about the failing New York Times. And I mean, everybody, I don't have to get into that. Everybody knows. And then there's Pierre Poilievre, who I might describe as antagonistic, but he sort of seems to enjoy it. The apple orchard scene and his comments about defunding the CBC and that sort of a thing. But I think he's turned down 15 interview requests from this show as an example. What do you make of the changing relationship with media and conservative politicians in Canada? And how do you think that might influence the next federal election, maybe a little bit differently than when your former boss was last running, coming up on 10 years ago?
Yeah, and I think, Ryan, it's a great question. I think it all has down to the technology and what you can do with it now. When I worked for the Prime Minister, you had to go through the media by and large if you wanted to reach people. You didn't really have a choice. And Stephen Harper's view on things was that he would want to do that when he had something to say. And he was mindful that if he was out all the time, people would either get fed up, tired, bored, whatever. But if he had to do media, he would do it, and he'd always do it well. I can hardly remember a time watching him do a press conference or an interview where I thought, oh my God, he screwed that up. He was quite reliable that way, even if he wasn't prolific. And I think, look, writ large, I think conservatives have always felt that they've gotten a bum ride from the media, who they view as left of center. And look, in my time in Ottawa, if I had to guess at the personal politics of most of the press corps, probably not ours in terms of conservative, but broadly fair in how they approach the job. And I think a couple of things have happened. Conservatives now have roots, and all politicians do. They can go around the media and speak directly to supporters on their own platforms. And so it becomes a question of mobilizing and what's the best way to do that. And it's hardly ever to send your message through a filter like the press that will challenge you. And we've also had the media fall down in terms of, newsrooms have been crushed. I don't have to tell you these things. The media ecosystem is down on its knees. It's taking government money. It doesn't have the reach, impact, power that it used to have. And so that makes a politician much more able to look down their nose at it. Go, look, I don't need you. You need me. I don't need you. So unless I get it exactly on my terms, we're not going to do this. And I'm going to speak to podcasters. I'm going to speak to my own supporters that have their own networks, often millions in reach and number, numbers that most media organizations can't touch. And so it's a much more varied ecosystem, but it's one that's not set up to get accountability. And that's the issue. When anybody can run around saying anything and not be challenged on it, you shouldn't be surprised when a whole bunch of BS starts getting spread. So it's not a good thing that the media's on its knees, and it will be a big issue. Media subsidy, the power of the media, that will be weaponized in this election, and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. I found myself all twisted up talking to a buddy who's, kind of an ardent conservative, loves the idea of defunding the CBC. And we were actually out on a hike a couple of weeks ago and we got into it. And I've always really appreciated the CBC. As an adult, I had to wrap my mind around something because my grandpa Rudy, my mom's dad, was, I think for all intents and purposes, a conservative. I never talked to him about how he voted, really, but I always know that he taught me that Petro-Canada stands for Pierre Elliott Trudeau rips off Canada. So that was kind of like his position on it, right? But yet he watched the CBC all the time, and that kind of didn't occur to me till later in life. But I have these wonderful memories of like Knowlton Nash and Peter Mansbridge and Hockey Night in Canada with Grandpa, right? But then working in for-profit media, for like almost 20 years, I always felt that when I was on TV with City TV and Global and on Recourse Radio and all this type of stuff, that CBC it had an unfair advantage, that they were unfairly funded, that they didn't have to sell advertising, there was no bottom line, that ratings didn't really seem to matter with their local news product. So it always kind of bugged me. But I still saw value in it, in particular in like remote and northern communities and some of the Canadian programming. It always kind of drove me nuts that like shows would get funded by tax dollars like Schitt's Creek that probably should be able to swim on their own and would have swam on their own and did in the U.S. I understand I'm going layer to layer to layer here. But I found myself twisted up in this hiking conversation because I was arguing against defunding the CBC while at the same time acknowledging that I don't love the model. And I would love to see a political leader or maybe, across the aisle having a conversation about what should the CBC look like. Can we all acknowledge the importance of journalism, the importance of information sharing, the importance of connecting people in Canada, regardless of where they live, while at the same time acknowledging that there is some bloat and it is a big budget. And you know what I'm saying? So I just hope to have, at the end of the day, a mature conversation about this, but I think it would be a real tragedy to see Canada's national broadcaster essentially canceled. And I don't know that any PM would actually do it. Like, would do you think that Pierre Poilievre would actually like drive a stake into the heart of the CBC?
100%.
Really?
I think he. And what I would rather see is all of its budget dedicated to local newsrooms.
Yeah.
This idea of telling Canadian stories in a Canadian way is outmoded. And look, the CBC is outmoded. It was created at a time where national broadcast media was a novel new thing that most people couldn't get into. Now you can broadcast across the country with a cell phone and a signal. So it's a different game now. But I still think if you look at the news deserts that are springing up across the country, once vibrant media markets that have just had everything cratered because, the big tech platforms now take all the ad money. I think there is room for in the short term government funded local news that holds local courts, councils, etc. to account, because that doesn't make money, and it's never made money. Journalism has never made money. It's the advertising that's made it. The journalistic product and output isn't excitable enough to make money, but it's needed. We need that scrutiny and accountability, because if we don't, the people in power will do weird things, and we don't want that.
I always so enjoy talking to you, Andrew, and we really appreciate your time. You're, of course, at the end of your workday in London, and we want to thank you for making time for us here. People can read your column. Poilievre will have to avoid the Starmer flop on the line. That's at readtheline.ca. You've been hearing from Andrew MacDougall, director at Trafalgar Strategy. You can follow him on Twitter at AG MacDougall. We'll talk to you again, pal. Thanks for doing this.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Saw in the chat there, interesting comment from different Ken. We got 2 Ken Ks that are with us in the chat like every single day. We appreciate them both. We're going to have to find a way to, I feel like we should call the one Super Chat Ken, because he's always so generous on our Super Chat with $5 here, $5 there. So Super Chat Ken figures that Pierre Poilievre's going to win. And Ken, I lost your comment, but I'm going to paraphrase it. He says that Poilievre's going to win. He will become prime minister, but he figures he's positioning himself to be a one-term prime minister because he thinks that his personality is going to basically rub people the wrong way.
It is. It's going to be. I was talking to someone about this the other day. I think it's going to be this uproar at the beginning. Oh my gosh, change whatever, and then what always comes? It's the same when Trump got in. Like, he didn't drain the swamp. He didn't do all these things he said. Got government policy and getting things to change takes years and years. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think by year 3, 4, the attitude that Pierre, unless. And credit to him if he does it. You never know. He could 180 when he gets in there and become a little bit more humble and gear down a bit, because he does have the reins. He is sitting in that chair now. He's going to become
more humble when he becomes prime minister.
You know what I mean, though.
Right.
You know what I mean. He may take a step back and be like, okay, let's actually try and get some of these things done, which I hope is going to happen, because I agree with Andrew. I think people are sick of Justin Trudeau, whether you like him or not. I think it's just he's drained on us. But it's the same thing. Maybe he does. Maybe he takes a step back. Maybe he does some of the things he actually says. But in my mind, I think by year 3, 4, people are going to be just as annoyed with him as they are with Trudeau's ego right now.
Now, here's the thing, though, too, is that, you know, and I'll take Super Chat Ken's point. Chat Ken. Hey, when you get a nickname, that's the nickname. I don't think he'll mind. Yeah. But you don't have to, like, as long as your base is satisfied and happy. And this is kind of the new school of politics. Like, you're not. You know, I was watching this thing on I don't know, wherever it was, something I was scrolling on, probably Instagram or TikTok, and they were going through like past U.S. presidential debates. Okay. And there was like, you know, Richard Nixon, I think it was Nixon and Kennedy was the first one, and they were talking about like, I'm not here, you know, that's my JFK. I'm not here to disparage my opponent. You know, I'm here to, that's actually a pretty good JFK.
Park the car and have a yacht.
Park the car and have a beer. No, but they basically he was like, I'm not here to basically take a shit on this guy. I'm here to talk about why we have a shared vision, but different ways to get there. Okay. And then you have Ross Perot, like, who was, when I think of Ross Perot, I think of Dana Carvey, and that, I mean, you want to talk about great political impressions, but like Ross Perot there as an independent, and he's there going, I'm not going to sit here and slam these two gentlemen, these two publics, these guys have done this. He goes, we're going to here to talk about ideas. Mm-hmm. And I think that they're like, I am desperate for that to get back into politics. But right now, the reality is, no one's really trying to win over decided voters anymore. Like, if you look at where the support's coming from, Poilievre's supporters, and I mean, obviously I'm painting with real broad brushes here, but Poilievre's supporters, many of Trump's supporters are people that are new to politics. Oh, yeah. Like people that never held a political membership before.
They may have
people
never voted before.
Never voted before. Exactly.
I think a lot of them are non-voters.
So, you know, so I don't know that they're sitting, you know, that I mean, if it's working for Pierre to be a little bit snide and to decline media interviews and to take swipes and like whatever it is that he's doing and it's working, I'm not convinced you're going to see a change in behavior there. So, oh my gosh, the other Ken K.
Now it's a super chat war.
Has now kicked in $10 into our YouTube super chat. He says a beer for the Kennedy. Well, thank you, Ken. A beer for the Kennedy accent. He says from the other Ken K. Yeah. So we've got well, now there's just a straight up fight. Hey, I support this. If you guys want to throw cash at the show and fight over the nicknames, that's perfectly fine with me. I also want to note here, I didn't mention it in the interview, but I did see it. It's a big day for Ben Demon Hunter's family in our chat. Ben Demon Hunter's wife, I think he said after 17 years, almost 20 years of waiting, becomes a Canadian citizen today.
Absolutely incredible.
How cool
Congratulations.
Is that? So congratulations, Ben. Congratulations to your wife, and congratulations. It sounds to me like maybe Canada's adding one here. This is a great ad for the country. Yeah. So congratulations to you, Ben.
I like how you brought up that non-voter thing, because I do think I think about that too. Like all the Trump voters who this is the first time they're going to the polls, because there is this big belief that like voting is so flawed and failed, and there's so much like voter fraud, but like I can tell that these people have never registered to vote, because you have to be a real person to register. Just because you don't have to show ID in certain states or certain demographics, you still have to be a real person to register to vote, right? But also, I like how you brought Elon. I just want to show some pictures, because Elon at the Trump rally the other day was just, I didn't even know this guy could jump. Look at this.
Yeah,
Elon can jump.
Wearing his Occupy Mars t-shirt.
Look at this one.
Yeah, it was. What can I say?
We're showing some photos here, but
he's obviously a big Trump supporter, and I mean, is he technically? He's not the richest man. He's like top 3, isn't he? Who is?
Pretty sure he is
richest person in the world.
It's either him or Amazon guy.
Is the Forbes real-time billionaires list? Yeah, it has Elon Musk, richest person in the world with a net worth of. Can you imagine $269 billion?
Well, I tell you, if I was him, I'd be doing this too. I'd be
man. If I had $269,000, I would.
Dude, this is the thing I said the other day on the show, and this is why, like, I originally, I think Tesla's cool. I think the rockets are cool. I think, the satellites with the internet and space, all this stuff was cool. I had an affinity, a little love for Elon Musk back in the day. But what really rubs me wrong way nowadays, Ryan, is what you just stated. If I had that much money, I would not use my time meddling in other people's lives, in people who are never going to have close to the amount of freedom, the amount of advances, the amount of money that I have. It just seems like anyone who spends their time trying to piss people off on a social media platform that they own all day, when they could be on an island enjoying life, doing whatever the heck they want. There's got to be something wrong with them.
Yeah. I'm always curious. I love these conversations with friends. You guys probably have them with yours too. It's like when it comes to like finances, and for most of us, that's going to be a lottery win. I mean, some of you, I love our entrepreneurial base. Having lunch today with the senior team at Alberta Chambers of Commerce. We got the next Eye on Alberta Business coming up. I was proud to partner with the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce for that CFR pancake breakfast. Boy, did we ever have fun last Friday. So much fun. Yeah. So obviously the entrepreneurial spirit, my man, I respect the hustle. And for a lot of you, you're building value in these companies, and that's going to be, your life's work. And obviously you sort of look at that. So whether you're talking about selling a company or whether you're talking about winning the lottery, I love the conversations of like, how much is enough for you to basically fold the tent, quit your job, and check out? And you'll get different answers from different people. It depends stage of life you're at as well.
What's yours? What's your number?
I don't know. Like, I think like winning $2 million would be amazing, but I don't think you quit your job if you win $2 million.
But if I had $2 million, I'd invest it right, so in a few years I could check out.
Pay off your house, pay off the high interest stuff, and then $5 million would be nice. $10 million if we're just dreaming.
If you could take $2 million,
be nice?
Yeah. If you could take invest it in something that in 5 years grows or gives you a paycheck of, $80,000 to $150,000 a year even, I would be like, hey, I can buy a nice little home in the woods and just live for free,
Wise Kyle's in the chat. Whiskey La. And he says Johnny doesn't have the billionaire's mentality. Probably neither of us do.
Actually.
If we had the billionaire's mentality, we wouldn't be doing this.
If I had $1 billion, I would give away 90% of it. Because
what percent
nobody needs $1 billion.
Would I get 1% at least?
I tell you, if I ever won the lottery,
1%.
You're talking about this. I've talked to my partner about this, JC, because everyone. You probably do it with your wife. If we won the lottery,
every week.
And the first thing I would do, I would come in here and give you an envelope with a check and just let you open it and just be like, "Buddy, thank you." But we need an exit plan because I'm out of here soon.
I already have it planned. What I'm doing when I win the lottery with you. Yeah, I'm going to come in and actually you're fired. But the reason you're fired,
in a good way?
You're fired in a good way. We'll fire you, and then we'll have that moment of you giving me the what the hell face, and I think it's got. You say check. I like cash.
Oh,
just like one of those silver briefcases that opens up, and it's just like
James Bond.
Has like the LED lights inside, and it shines
like
on
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction is right. And from Pulp Fiction to real life, it's Wednesday. And it's the week end of Thanksgiving coming up ahead of us, right? The Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And our friends in Jasper are so excited to be rolling out that red carpet for visitors again. It's been a while, but we're so thrilled to have MyJasper Memories back on Real Talk, presented by our dear friends at Tourism Jasper. And Johnny, this time around, actually, I asked them for permission to do this because I had a memory pop up on my Facebook just yesterday, and I thought I might share it with the group. We talk a lot about how you can make your own wonderful memories in Jasper. I want to tell you about one of mine. So this is 7 years ago. All right, I can't believe it. Time just flies. But my parents, who live in Calgary, invited us as a family, those of us who could make it, to join them at the Jasper Park Lodge for a family Thanksgiving celebration that we would never forget. The reason why I love this location for our audience members in Edmonton and Calgary. In Edmonton, you know how you're going to get out to the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge, obviously, and then the anticipation grows as you head west on the Highway 16, and the leaves are changing this time of year, and the colors are absolutely exploding, and then you hit Hinton, and you feel the mountains, and you're almost there. Meantime, the people coming up from Calgary are on probably the most beautiful drive in the country, and one of the most beautiful drives around the world, I would say, Highway 93. Of course, you've got that Columbia Icefields Parkway, a stunning trip past that glacier, and then you arrive in Jasper National Park. So we convene together. We share this weekend. The meals, I mean, I'm closing my eyes as I'm remembering the time that we shared together around Lac Beauvert at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge, heading into the Jasper town site. The weather's this time of year is still, it's that crisp autumn weather, but you can still fit in those day hikes. You can still go and support the local vendors, grab a pint on a patio somewhere, take the dogs out for a walk. Oh, Moses, there he is. We miss you, buddy. So many wonderful memories, including a round of golf at Canada's #1 resort golf course, if you're lucky enough for that course to still be open this time of year. Just absolutely stunning. I will never forget our family Thanksgiving out in beautiful Jasper, Alberta. If you're looking for something to surprise your family with this weekend, there's a very good chance you can still get in at the Lodge or another one of the wonderful hotels or resorts out there in Jasper. I know there's a lot of...
What's this dog photo about?
Which one? Oh, that's coming up. That's coming up a little later. No,
sorry.
I didn't tell Johnny what's coming up. That's my friend Amanda. She's just out with a new book. It's coming up in just a second. But there's a lot of restaurants right now that would typically this time of year be all booked up. Hotels would be all booked up. But right now, considering the fact they've just reopened, there's a real chance that you could make a last-minute move to really surprise your family and give them a gift that they will never forget, just like my parents did 7 years ago. We'll be forever grateful for that. I also want to, if you are heading out to the park, want to draw your attention to Tourism Jasper's website. That's jasper.travel/wildfire. They've done a really good job on the welcome back information, just reminding us all about responsible tourism.
Now more than ever.
You know what I mean? I saw somebody post the other day, they were wearing this hazmat suit. They're just a civilian, but they're wearing the hazmat suit and they're sifting through the rubble of their home that had burned to the ground. They're trying to find anything that survived, whether it's grandma's pearls or whatever it is. And people visitors were photographing them.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's kind of not how we want to roll, right?
I like that you mentioned that. Like, if you go up there now, it's not to sightsee the disaster.
Yeah,
right?
No, of course, it's interesting to see the swath that fire cut, and in particular in the west end of town, but you're right, Johnny. So, they want you to just remember to respect all area closures, capture the beauty, not the damage. That's what we were just talking about. And of course, support local. Quite frankly, let's get off our wallets and dump some cash into the businesses and the tourism operators that are out there in Jasper National Park. We love you guys and can't wait to get out there. If you're going to be out there with your family for Thanksgiving, make sure you tag us with the Real Talk RJ hashtag, as well as MyJasper, so we can feature some of your memories in future episodes of MyJasper Memories. Now, let me tell you about this book.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
No. You're covering me because sometimes I forget. So you're looking out for me. This is my friend Amanda Skwarok. She's a mental health counselor. She works in the field of mental health, but she's also a children's book author, and I'm so proud of her. She has just released a book called Jespo and Johnny, a true Canadian tale. This is so cool. This is a true story. This is a true story about her dog Jasper, who went missing in the park, and the steps that they had to go to find the little guy, which they did. It's a great news story. This is a book that's written for young kids in memory and honor of Jasper, who passed away about 8 years ago. And Amanda, as this book was getting set to be published, the artwork on it's amazing. The writing is amazing. She felt compelled to release the book, and get this, Johnny, she's taking all royalties from those book sales, and she's donating them to the that Jasper Fire Caring Community Fund, that community
that's
fund
awesome.
that we've been talking about.
That's great.
I'm so proud of Amanda for this. The book is fantastic. You can purchase Jespo and Jasper, that's the book, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Thrift Books, and give her a follow as well on Instagram at amanda.skwarok. I'll link to it in the show notes. The book Jespo and Jasper. MyJasper Memories is presented every Wednesday. We're thrilled to have him back by our friends at Tourism Jasper.
I feel like that is exactly the type of page turner my partner would be into.
Yeah,
Jasper
man.
and Jasper.
And hey, like you can order them now, you'll get them in time for early Christmas gifts, stocking stuffers, what have you. It'll be absolutely fantastic. We talked about the NHL season kicking off, and one other thing that I wanted to mention. This is a great news story, not just for the province of Saskatchewan, not just for Canada, not just for the Seattle Kraken, nor the National Hockey League.
I know
but
what
I
you're
think
gonna
we're
talk
talking
about
inclusion
here.
in sport.
Yeah, it's amazing.
How cool was
Amazing.
it last night to see the pride of Saskatchewan, Jessica Campbell, on the bench? She is the first woman in NHL history to stand behind the bench as an assistant coach.
That's awesome.
Brought in by Dan Bilesma and blazing a trail there. Absolutely fantastic. A former member of, I think it was 2015. She was on Team Canada's national women's team. She's done some coaching in Germany, and she's done some coaching in minor pro. And Coach Bilesma brought her in as part of his staff, and it's been very cool to see. I think a lot of the excitement, they talk a lot about how when we're talking about, diversity, equity of opportunity, these types of things, whether it's gender-based, whether it's, your sexuality, your gender, whether it's like your ethnicity, whether it's your religion, like seeing a woman behind the bench in the National Hockey League.
It's incredible.
Or seeing somebody like, serving with the RCMP wearing a turban, or seeing somebody on a television show. Remember when Bean Gill was in here, seeing a television cast on a nationally produced and internationally released show, and all of them are using wheelchairs. Stuff like this, where you go, oh my gosh, that's a first. Yeah. The first is always really exciting.
And then on the flip side of that, I'll play devil's advocate. It sucks to see the blowback from it.
Have you seen any?
You scroll down enough, you get down in the dirt and you see the comments. But this woman earned her spot. She worked hard for this.
Hell yeah.
This isn't DEI. She worked in hockey for a while. She earned her spot. Now she's in there.
Yeah.
And she's going to have this job like anyone else. If she doesn't do good, she'll be let go. If she does great, she'll move up in the world. I can't wait until we see a head coach in the NHL who's a female. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, very cool as well. I see Travis in the chat giving us the heads up. The Alberta Beer Awards are tonight. I had no idea.
No.
He
Don't
says,
tell us about that.
Oh, well, why are they not asking us to host and DJ?
I mean,
wouldn't we be a perfect fit?
I'm going to have to send an email.
Travis says, go Bent Stick. He's a big fan of Bent Stick Brewing. Shout out to Cole and the team at Bent Stick. I can't pick favorites, but gosh, I want to go. Hey, can you seriously just put me on this camera? Actually, no, we're going to do a commercial break. Here's what we're doing. Real Talkers, we do this live.
You want me to go get some beers from the fridge?
But I want you to go into my gym bag that's in my office.
Okay.
Unzip it and grab me the yellow and red cans. Okay.
And only if I get a sip after.
You can have a sip. They're room temperature, but you can get a cold one after. But okay, so you can do that for me in just a second. Okay, hang tight, Real Talkers. In the meantime, the magic of this show doesn't happen without amazing partners like our friends at California Closets. California Closets absolutely transformed the way that we use and enjoy our home. I'm going to be honest with you. We needed some help in carrying my bedroom, in the kids' bedrooms, down in our kind of, you might call it like our family room, the entertainment center area, and they came in. I mean, obviously we had a free design consultation to start, and then we worked with their team, working with our budget to design a system that would work perfectly for us. And boy, did they ever deliver. 10 years later now, I think it's like 9.5 years ago we did this. We are still thrilled with it. Everything functions still the way that it did the day it was installed, and we have that confidence of a lifetime guarantee. That's what California Closets does. So if your project's going to be $10,000 or $150,000, depending on the scope of it, they can do it better than anybody else. You can book that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Hey, speaking of inclusion, speaking of equity, speaking of making the right move, how cool is it? The team at Athabasca University, when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about their board of governors deciding just a short time ago, at the beginning of September, to reduce tuition by 10% for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students in Canada. This reduction, 10% reduction, is part of AU's ongoing efforts to enhance access and equity for Indigenous students. And it's also an important step in their ongoing commitment in conciliation with Indigenous people in Canada and to the principles of truth and reconciliation. If you want to learn more about Indigenous supports and services at Athabasca University, you can check out athabascau.ca/Indigenous. And let's be honest, Jasper, many of these businesses, a lot of the homes that are occupied again now after that interruption would not be so if it wasn't for the hard work of the team at Complete Care Restoration. They've got team members deployed there. They're living out there right now, working, some of them in temporary housing, some of them commuting in from Hinton to get folks back, their properties restored and their peace of mind rebuilt as soon as possible. You will not meet a team that better exemplifies professionalism than Complete Care Restoration. They've got emergency services available 24/7 around the clock. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca.
People in the chat already saying, "Oh, I know where this is going."
The beers? Well, hey, listen, this is
still cold, by the way.
No, this is
still cold.
This is really exciting, as a matter of fact, and it started with tragedy, which I have shared with you on the show before, and now I'm so excited. There's I don't know what you want to call it. There's no silver lining to suicide, but this beer, this is the True Joy Irish Red Ale, and these are the first 4 cans that have ever been sold from Arcadia Brewing Company.
Wow.
In our home city of Edmonton. I don't know if Arcadia is nominated for any Alberta Beer Awards, but they should be. But check this out. This True Joy Irish Red Ale is being released in honor of my best buddy Loz, of Tim Lozinik, who passed away at the beginning of June. And I am so thrilled that the team at Arcadia, including their owner, Darren McGowan, we call him Magoo, his brewmaster, and that entire team is supporting mental health services by releasing this True Joy Irish Red Ale.
Awesome.
You can visit the brewery. They were canning them last night. So
Nice.
I snagged these, right? I was like, you gotta let me be the first one to buy these. But
You can always rely on
they're
you, right?
They're available. I think we single-handedly keep him in business. No, I'm just joking. But you can buy them in the brewery in 4-packs. They'll soon be available in liquor stores, and then you'll be able to get it on tap starting on Thursday. And I just want to let you know that they're donating $1 from each 4-pack to, it's called Rucksack for Remembrance, which is a firefighter run and a firefighter created event in partnership with Wounded Warriors Canada, and this is to support mental health services and mental health resources for first responders, including firemen. So firefighters, I should say. So this is the True Joy Irish Red Ale. It's now available at Arcadia Brewing Company in Edmonton in honor of our best buddy, Tim Lozinik. That's the True Joy Irish Red Ale.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you bet,
R.I.P.
buddy.
Loz. Ken in the chat says, gonna have to check these out. Travis says, I will be trying that out tonight.
Oh, I love that,
For
Travis.
sure.
Thank you, buddy. We appreciate everybody that's going to show some support there. I know that who cares? I was going to say the show's going a little long. We don't have anywhere to be.
Yeah,
If
give me
we-
one of those.
Yeah.
Let's
Do you
keep
want
it
one
going.
right now?
I'll have one.
100%.
Sure.
Yeah,
You
actually.
want one?
Well, I said, can I toss it over? I said
Oh,
these are going to be room temperature, but they're not. They're actually
I love this
they're actually
job.
nice and cold. Yeah, this is. I'm going to have this too because I'm going to read a few. How's that for one of the best sounds in the world?
Cheers to Loz.
To Laws. Thanks, Johnny. I appreciate your support there. Johnny does more to keep me emotionally healthy than any of you would ever believe. Leslie says healing comes in all forms, and this is wonderful. So we had a really neat conversation with Dr. Kate Zinser yesterday.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she was up from Chicago. She's an expert in inclusive ed, in particular. And she's written a book on this epidemic. It's happening in the United States. It's happening right here in Alberta as well. Little kids, like I'm talking 2.5, 3, 4 years old, are being expelled out of childcare centers because they've got some behavioral issues, quite frankly. I mean, a whole bunch of different reasons, but it hurts the bottom line of the daycare, of the child care center, and so they're getting kicked out. Now, obviously, I've like oversimplified the issue. You got to check out the episode yourself. But she was joined by Amber Mack, who's the CEO of a company called Grit, of a nonprofit, and they work with families like the Hansen family. Tiffany joined us as well. She's a mom of twins, and one of the little girls, two little girls, these twins. Interesting. One of them has had no issues, and then one of them, she's got some behavioral challenges. She's like 3 years old, you guys, right? She's 3, and she's getting booted out of these childcare centers. So they talked to us about what's happening. It's been part of an ongoing conversation here on the show. around inclusiveness in ed. You remember Laura, who's a real talker. She wrote us an email last week as a teacher of 10 years on what it was like trying to manage a classroom with a whole bunch of students, some of them requiring some more attention. And she basically says kids are falling through the cracks. I'll be honest, that email didn't land with people how I expected it to. And it just goes to show why I think that your emails, Real Talkers, your comments, the replies that you leave, the comments on our YouTube episodes are so important because you're walking miles that we're not. And so we've heard from so many parents and so many teachers that said, actually, we're not sure that the perspectives align. And what good is this show if we're not continuing these conversations? So that's what we've been doing. And I want to get to some of these emails here, but first, why don't we tee up yesterday's episode? Just here's a brief highlight, talking about what inclusive ed needs to look like, whether it's in childcare all the way up into university, and how classrooms need to reflect society.
With all the expulsions that our daughter had from 2.5 to 4 years, definitely made us feel defeated and alone, and that our daughter was being labeled and there was something wrong with her. Inclusion is access. 1 in 50 children will be diagnosed with autism.
Is that up over 10 years or 20 or 50 years ago as far as you know?
It is up, absolutely. And we're diagnosing it more. We know this is coming. We are not going to build containers for all of these pieces. And this has to do with deeper issues around unconscious bias and remembering that those children have a right to be in the least restrictive setting.
If you're from a young age learning how to play with kids with different physical needs who maybe are on the autism spectrum or maybe have additional emotion regulation needs, it helps you be a better friend.
So that's just a powerful exchange on the show. That would have been our October 8th episode if you want to check it out. So Shalaine, who's always in our chat, and we sure appreciate Shalaine. She's an EA. One of her comments kind of got this whole thing started, to be honest with you. And she writes in and she says, Laura wasn't exaggerating in her email, though, when she said that we changed diapers in elementary school. She says, I've done that. I've also been thrown up on, bitten, and kicked. But I've also been hugged. I've had my hand held. I've been told how much they love me. She says, any EA, any education assistant will tell you that we don't do it for the wage. She says, I'm currently paid $19.53 an hour at a max of 6 hours a day. So my lunches, my breaks aren't paid. I started because I was volunteering at my kid's school, and eventually the principal said, you're here so much, you might as well get paid for it. She says, kind of ironic, though, it still feels like volunteering. She says, some of the kids I work with have needs so severe that even professionals with years of training would struggle. But here I am, a mom with no formal experience beyond raising my own kids, and I'm entrusted with their care. I firmly believe, says Shalaine, that inclusive ed is important. Some students in the program benefit greatly from being around their peers, learning to socialize, interact in a typical classroom environment. And when done properly, inclusive ed encourages empathy and a sense of belonging for all students on both sides. I love that the doctor said that yesterday. Remember, she said it, having these challenges or, different kids, different scenarios in a classroom teaches kids to be better friends, right? Shalaine says, unfortunately, in Alberta, the current state of inclusive ed is just not meeting the standards it was designed to achieve. And so many kids, like the ones that Laura mentioned, end up disengaged, sitting on bouncy balls in corners of classrooms, distracting other students, or isolated because their needs are so complex that the system is unable to support them. So instead of receiving additional educational support they deserve, these kids often receive care that feels more like babysitting. The focus on keeping them safe, giving their parents, or grown-ups, as we say, as much help and support as we can. The current model in Alberta is failing both the students with high needs and the EAs, as well as teachers and admin working on the front lines. Shalaine says the reality is many people haven't stepped foot in a classroom in years. And if they did, they would see how much the system has changed from when they were in school. And more importantly, how much the support is just urgently needed. And without increased funding, specialized programs, and proper staffing will probably fall short of providing these kids with the care and education that they deserve. She says we also can't overlook other students in the class struggling with literacy and numeracy skills who also need attention and support to bring them up to par. And it's really disheartening to see there's got to be better balance. That from Shalaine. So really appreciate that from her. Also wanted to read this one from Nicole. We really appreciate you sharing this. She says, to quote an Indigenous elder who spoke of his experience with a rigid teacher who berated him for his learning differences, the problem wasn't his learning disability. The problem was the teacher's learning disability. And I think that any parent who's fought for an inclusive life for their disabled child can attest that they've heard messages through that child's life of that kid not belonging in every part of society, healthcare, haircuts, using public spaces, rec programs, the swimming pool, the classroom. What a message that gives not only to disabled children, but to non-disabled peers that are hearing and seeing the fallout from that messaging, right? Over and over, they hear you don't belong. And then the same people that give us that message, scratch their heads when those kids struggle with regulation. Nothing fuels dysregulation quite like discrimination and exclusion. Nicole says there's plenty of schools, plenty of teachers, when appropriately supported with the right training and professional development, who succeed teaching inclusive classrooms. Teaching students is literally their job, not teaching some students, teaching all students. And we need to stop treating the education of disabled students as an optional task, because it's not. There's tons of research showing the benefits and stronger academic outcomes to both disabled and non-disabled peers when you have an inclusive classrooms. And the types of strategies found in inclusive classrooms include peer tutoring, cooperative learning groups, differentiated instruction. It benefits all learners. Research shows improved math scores for students without disabilities as a result of inclusive cooperative learning groups. The neat thing about studying history, says Nicole, particularly of civil rights movements, is you get to discern patterns that repeat themselves. Excluding women from classrooms was justified by saying they distracted the real students, the men, and they took resources away from men. Women's education was treated as optional. They were told they didn't belong. And the same argument was used for excluding and segregating different races. Non-whites education treated as optional, told they didn't belong. And still today, we hear the same tired, boring arguments to exclude and segregate disabled kids. Teaching all kids is the job, not some kids, all of them. Maybe the real problem is teachers teaching disability, born of inadequate professional development and training in an ableist system that sees disabled kids as less than. That from Nicole. I thought that was a great email.
2 great emails.
Right?
Yesterday, our guests, those autism numbers really hit me. When she said 1 in 50, Would
you have thought it was higher or lower than that?
Well, I knew back in the 90s, it was 1 in 2,000. So to hear in 20 years it's gone to 1 in 50 seems like an incredible jump to me. I do want to also say that I was talking in the chat with some people and I said, they're not on the rise. What I meant was, I want to walk that back, because what I meant was, and what our guest said as well, is we're diagnosing it more, right? So is there an increase? Yes, there is, but also we're seeing it earlier and more. And then I looked up some of the reasons why autism is prevalent these days, and it's crazy. Like premature babies is one reason. Obviously we have the medical means now to get more premature babies into the world safely, and that's a predisposition to develop autism. Another one is when you have babies later in life, past your 30s and 40s, which people are nowadays, that's another predisposition to Alzheimer's or to autism. There's also the thing where we just don't know what causes autism. It's like when a perfectly healthy female gets breast cancer, we don't know, right? So I just want to walk that back, because I did say in the chat it's not on the rise. What I meant was a lot of those numbers are because of awareness and because we're diagnosing it way earlier, right? So
Yeah. Vamp Fashion says some kids don't belong in classrooms, some belong in kitchens or shops or in the forest, building a campfire and watering the horses. I agree with that sentiment, but heck, we've had conversations in past on some of these interesting fast tracks and workforce implications. Shauna Feth from the Alberta Chambers has talked to us about that a lot, about neat opportunities for high school kids. And I want to read this one from Dean, and we'll wrap the show with this. This one, I'm going to read it. Look at this. It's 2-pager, but it's really good. Dean says, He says, I listen to literally every episode of Real Talk, and I spend summers and days off in your chat. That means a ton to us, Dean. He says, I've taught in specialized behavior programs for almost my entire teaching career, 15 years, from residential programs where students live on site to self-contained special ed classrooms in so-called, regular public schools. I've worked with students all the way from grade 1 to high school, and for the last 3 years, I've been in a self-contained elementary behavior program in a public school. So that's the background. Dean says the students who end up in my class are typically the 1 or 2 most concerning students in the entire school. These are the kids who display violence, they're destroying classrooms, they're running and hiding through the school, they're refusing to attend class, they're putting staff, students, and themselves at risk. And in all cases, they have a 1-to-1 EA, okay, and they're often being supported by admin and other adults in the building for essentially the entire day. They're also, but not always, not in the inclusive classroom. for much of the day, and they get taught in side rooms or offices or hallways or other locations away from their peers. They're doing very little to no work most of the time, to be honest. He says, my program's been very successful in giving students the skills they need to do well at school, to feel good about themselves, and often to reintegrate into inclusive classrooms. The trick is to get them early, Dean says. When I've taught in junior high programs, there are very few true success stories. He says, I've had a few, but the behavior is often pretty entrenched by that point, and it's a long, slow process to get those students back on track. Not a lot of runway left in their school careers. Nearly every student, Dean says, that he's had from the primary grades 1 to 3 has seen significant and quick improvement. He says students arrive in these programs with a negative view of school, teachers, and definitely themselves. And the first thing I do is make them feel included in the classroom. We share a lot about ourselves. We get to know each other. We talk about our previous night, things we're excited for. We tell stories. A lot of the lessons have a large component of class discussion time to share even more. Students can take a long time to open up, but they all eventually get there. And the fact that they know they can be open and honest without judgment shows that they can trust the adults and the other students in the room. He says, I also have a lot of explicit social skills time where we play games to learn how to take turns, how to show good sportsmanship, how to joke with each other, how to interact with people your own age. For a lot of these students, they're coming from a place where other kids are scared of them. So they haven't interacted with them at all. And they're forming friend groups for the first time in their lives. And it teaches them how to navigate that in a supported, proactive way. He says all of this makes coming to school fun and exciting again. Students who arrive in my program have missed significant learning time so far, and this is just another reason that getting to them early is great because gaps in the learning are less severe. You can't be more than a couple of grades behind if you're in grade 2 or 3, right? We assess all the students and tailor the education completely to their needs. We have 3 adults, 1 teacher, and 2 EAs, and about 8 students. Each student supported for their work as much as they need us. We teach them tools to self-advocate, to build their confidence, and then we end each day with a catch-up block that doubles as free time when their work's done. There's usually enough incentive to get them completing most of their work in the day. We focus on literacy and numeracy. That has the biggest impact across all subjects. He says, a lot of the students who end up in these programs have learning disabilities, mental health conditions, and other diagnoses that will probably require them to have a modified program through their entire school career. He says, I really want to close by saying the last thing I focus on as much as possible is inclusion. We have integrated recesses with extra supervision. We do gym with an inclusive class. We participate in assemblies. We go to concerts. We go to field trips. We participate in the school clubs. We try to be as least restrictive as possible. And students are learning skills in that environment they wouldn't if they were being excluded. He says, some kids may be in my program for a few months, some maybe a couple of years before the transition begins. Some of them return to my room later on. He says, I know that this is a long email, Dean, don't sweat it. He says, I just wanted to show Real Talkers how important it can be to offer these proper supports for students like this and the impact that they can have. He says, I don't consider my program inclusive education. Inclusion works for a lot of students, not everyone. The students I teach are having very large impacts on their classes and schools. They were contributing to teacher stress and burnout. They were causing injuries to staff. They were preventing up to 30 other students from feeling safe or getting the educations they deserve. The students most affected, though, were themselves. By allowing these exclusive classrooms that specialize in meeting their needs, it feels like everybody benefits. And the families, to be honest, have been grateful for the progress the kids make. I send home daily reports to parents focusing on the positives, but acknowledging challenges, and I am in constant communication with the families. They're also getting supports from family support workers, division nurses, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, school counselors, and a bunch of others. Not nearly as much as they could use, but it's something. He says, I've seen the trajectory of a lot of lives change for the better over my career. And it's so obvious that the extra investment and time at a young age has profound impacts and savings down the road. We don't need to have that preschool to prison pipeline, Ryan, that you talked about on October 8th. We can divert a lot of these students with proper intervention early on. And he says, and for the record, I think with proper funding, supports, and training, a lot of this could be done in inclusive classrooms as well. That from Dean. Awesome email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I see the live chat's going off here, which is awesome. I know a lot of people are really connecting with this. A reminder, if you want your voice heard on the show, all you got to do is send us an email. Inbox is always open. Coming up on Thursday's episode, this is going to be the 10th of October. We invite you to join us in partnership with our friends at Edmonton Unlimited. As we wrap today, I want to put on your radar a roundtable with movers and shakers in the entrepreneurial world. Edmonton Unlimited hosts this launch party, which is startups, right? The really exciting but terrifying stage of a business. We're going to talk to people that have launched and they're flying now, baby. We'll get the secrets to their success. Plus, we'll be looking to the chat for your secrets. And on Friday, don't forget filmmaker Adam Skorji and NHL legend Jordan Tutu right here on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesper.